All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to our health program today. What a blessing. How many of you are here for the first time? Anyone here to our... Thank you so much for coming. Anyone else? All right, wonderful. We are so thankful that each of you are here this afternoon. You are in for a special blessing as Meryl is going to share with us the first hour, and then we have a wonderful cooking presentation. Dr. Margaret Song is with us as well. So we are in for a treat, and we're so thankful that you can come here to the Mentone Seventh-day Adventist Church. This is a church that appreciates the words of Jesus, that we might have life and that we might have it more abundantly. That is our goal. How many of you want an abundant life? Anyone there? Abundant life sound good to you? Well, that's what we want. So we're going to begin with prayer, and I'm going to turn it right over to Meryl for the presentation. Please bow your heads as we pray. Father in heaven, we are truly thankful for this day. We are so appreciative for all the gifts that we receive because of Jesus Christ, because of His life, His death, resurrection, and His intercession for us right now. So we pray that this program, this entire program in the afternoon will be a great blessing as we receive information, see practical hands-on demonstrations, get our questions answered. Bless us, we do pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, thank you, Pastor Rodney. You're going to switch my mic on. Here we go. So we do have some interesting information. I want to tell you this is informational. We're not trying to be advisors. I'm not a medical doctor. We will have some medical doctors here that you can talk with and get some basic information after the class. If you have any questions, there will be a little question and answer session. This is going to go on for like 45 minutes, this presentation. And so you can ask questions after that. If, however, you need a clarification on something from a slide, you're welcome to interrupt me in that regard. I can give you a brief background on who I am. I was in the Army for 12 years. I had left the church, left Christianity basically. I was in the Army as a ground pounder, they call it, the infantry, airborne infantry. And after I left Fort Benning, I ran into the Thrashes, the daughter of the Thrashes actually, and was introduced to Uchee Pine, self-supporting work, and I became a store manager of the Country Life restaurant. And so I learned a lot, kind of like on the fly, and nutrition was so interesting to me, I decided to come out west here, back to my home here in Southern California at Loma Linda, and take the Master in Public Health course in nutrition. I felt uncomfortable when I was working at Country Life and people come in and for this ailment or for that ailment, they wanted a nutrition recommendation. And all I had available was what's on the back of a pill bottle or the flyers from the manufacturers. And I knew that wasn't enough. I felt very much like a pharmacist because I know people go in to ask medical questions of a pharmacist, and a lot of times they will dispense that information without knowing the patient's history. So I really, this is a presentation, a general one, but it is not specific necessarily to your situation. However, we will have physicians available. This is especially, we're talking about the microbiome. There's a term called dysbiosis, which is dealing with the microbiome or our gut flora. Dysbiosis means the gut flora is like upside down. There's some issues going on with that person, and especially with irritable bowel syndrome and Crohn's disease. After I trained at Loma Linda, one of my first jobs was at Riverside Community Hospital, and they call it community. That's loosely what it is. It was a big city hospital, over 300 beds. I think there's more than that now. A fully operational big city hospital. And so I worked in ICU for most of that time and saw Crohn's patients and whatnot. In IBS, all of those are really individualized situations. And so we can't address those in a public setting per se, but individually, if you have questions about it, certainly we can respond to that. I also worked as a health inspector here and overseas, and then also worked with a school district, Moreno Valley School District, with their health and nutrition program for 6 years, and then I was finished up at Riverside Office on Aging, so dealing with senior nutrition. Okay, so this is based, I really want you to have an appreciation for how God has made our bodies. And you're going to see there may be some things. I know when I prepared this program, I gave it last year at the Beaumont Church, which is where I came from before I was at Mentone here. In preparing this program, I learned a lot about the microbiome that I'd never known before. It's not just bacteria that we have in our gut. It's a whole symphony of different organisms, microorganisms. And so this is a little bit of an appreciation, just a shallow dip into the microbiome. And again, we used to call it the gut flora. That's something a long time ago, and we used to think it's all about bacteria, and it isn't. Let me see if I can turn this on. Okay. So my theme for this presentation, I will praise you. This is coming from Psalm 139:14. This is David's psalm. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. Amen. So what are we talking about? Is there a possibility we can close that door a little bit? Thank you. The microbiome defined all the microorganisms found in our digestive system makes up the microbiome. And that starts in our mouth, with our saliva. We have different microorganisms up there, to include fungi in there that work with us. And then all the way down until we eliminate. That whole digestive or alimentary canal makes up where our microbiome works. And bacteria, archaea, fungi, protists. And so we're going to go through some of these really quick. This is not a microbiology class, but I just want to show you all the different types of organisms inside. Like I said, it's not just bacteria. But however, with bacteria, lactobacillus, lactococcus, you've heard of some of these because sometimes maybe you've gone to the store and Walmart, it could be anywhere, where they're going to sell you bifidus bacteria, and to help your gut. And we get a lot of these ads online and on TV, especially if you've had antibiotics. You have to recharge your gut. And I would say with most antibiotics nowadays that I take, if you take one after, dental surgery or something like that, your body's going to rebound pretty well without having to get a recharge. I have taken some of these lactobacillus, 50 million organisms, live organisms in a pill, whatever, and it just gave me diarrhea because it upset my stomach. I didn't need that. My body was able to recharge itself after a course of antibiotics for whatever reason. Now, there may be obviously more serious situations. I'm just giving you anecdotal for me in that regard. There's also a balance between two major types of bacteria, and one is called the firmicutes, and the other one's called the bacterioides, I think, bacterioides. There are two groups or big families of bacteria, and there's a ratio between them that keeps us healthy. Now, obviously, there's also bad bacteria. If we have food poisoning, the bad ones are like Salmonella, E. coli. I mean, right now, what is it, the Cryptosporidium that's going around with salads from Taylor's Farms, and the sources are basically from Mexico, and it's spread like over most of the Midwest and East Coast. I don't know if it's in California right now, but these were, Taylor Farms is a big premix. I love some of their salads. You know, they have kale blends and everything like that, but I'm staying away right now. I actually see them half price at some of the stores, and that's not good enough for me because I don't want to take that chance. But it comes basically because you have a cow pasture or something next to, or they may be fertilizing that field with live manure, you know, fresh manure, and that could be a big problem. That happened in Salinas up north here in Central California with spinach. Do you remember that 5 or 10 years ago? There were spinach fields up there, and so fresh spinach was a big problem until the state of California or the Department of Agriculture got in and got serious and said you shouldn't be growing spinach wherever there was adjacent spinach fields, because there could be runoff that would contaminate that field. So bacteria, there's a balance, and we have the good bacteria. Where do you think most of it is? There's bacteria in our mouth, esophagus, some in the stomach. You know, the stomach is not going to have a lot of bacteria that helps digest or break down, because that's where hydrochloric acid, the stomach, we have mostly acid to break down initially our food. We're going to find most of the bacteria that works in our gut in the intestines. You have 20 to 22 feet of small intestine, depending on your height. You have about 5 feet of colon, or the large intestine. And so in the folds and what they call the crypts of your intestinal walls is where the bacteria tend to work, along with the villi, the little fingers that stick out in your small intestine. This is where the food is broken down, and then the nutrients are extracted for your body to make repairs, for growth, things like that. Okay. Archaea is not bacteria. They used to call it, well, it's a different family of bacteria. Archaea is definitely not bacteria. In fact, it's not known that archaea, which are kind of like bacteria, they don't have a nucleus, they're very similar, they reproduce the same way, but they don't make us sick. There's no like bad archaea. And they're just something I'm still doing a lot of research on, but these are some of the names of some of the archaea that work to help to break down carbohydrates in our body, especially. So you'll find them in our intestine. This is what they look like, all different kinds. There's a hippie type one there, the red one with the long hair, or long strands, I call. So these are different types of archaea, similar to bacteria, but God had a different purpose for them in our bodies. And again, they're not disease-causing. The good bacteria and archaea help take up a lot of what's in our intestines. They're breaking down food. They're also keeping the bacteria out, the bad bacteria out, just by crowding them out. I think 90% of the microbiome that we have is in the form of archaea and bacteria. 90% of the microbiome that break down of those microorganisms are in these two categories, archaea and bacteria. The next one's kind of interesting is fungi. We have a fungus among us and inside of us. And these are some what's called the microbiota that work in our gut, and they also help break down sugars and carbohydrates, and they crowd out. They actually also function with the immune system. And the interesting thing, God has created these microorganisms. You know, we have an entire system of neurons. Besides our brain, the next largest component of neurons is in our digestive system. And so the neurons help communicate with all these different microorganisms, viruses, fungi, and they help to they coordinate together for digestion, but also for infections and things like that, to try to crowd out or attack infections. So it's quite a miraculous setup that we have. These are different fungi, and they actually look like it. There's some of these, when I was growing up, you had bread mold on your bread. You just took that mold out and put it in the toaster, right? I mean, that's what we did in the 60s. You just cut out that little piece of white mold, not knowing that actually once you saw visually mold, the spores were everywhere on the bread. They were all around. And I think toasting or baking killed them off. It probably wasn't hurtful in that, but didn't smell, and you put your jam on peanut butter on it, and you went on. Protists, these are all different unique types of organisms that are different. They're not in the other categories. And again, they are part of our digestive system. Even algae, slime molds. These are some of the different ones that can be in our bodies. We have different microbiomes. Mine is different from yours. If you were of African American ethnicity, it could be different. If you were living in China, you have a different microbiome than I do. You're eating differently. You're growing up in a different environment, exposed to different soils, climate, and so the microbiome is going to be different. So some of these things, more or less, you may have. I will tell you, some of these, for example, when I don't drink the water from Mill Creek. I live up in Forest Falls, and I don't drink that water because there are organisms in there that a deer or another animal has left in the water, and then it's come down, so like Giardia, things like that could make you sick. So there are bad types of protists, obviously. I don't think God created those. If God didn't create those kind of organisms, who did? Who developed them in Satan's laboratory? There is another aspect that's he's trying to get us in that way. The virome, we're talking about the part of the microbiome, this is the last one, are viruses. And viruses are little tiny fragments that they're not a complete cell. They have to almost be parasitic to go into a cell. They have DNA, and they will turn that cell into what they need or what they've been programmed for. And some of these, though, are actually very helpful. They're still being studied. It's still a new class of the microbiome that's being heavily studied. And I pointed out here on the TV screen, but also on the big screen, these little things that look like lunar landers, bacteriophages, they are activated in case there are viruses that we ingest. It could be like hepatitis. There are some other viruses out there that we ingest by mistake that may be in the food. We didn't wash thoroughly enough, or they didn't get cooked out. And these little lunar landers will attack them. They'll attack bacteria that are infectious and harmful. So that's how they're not a complete cell, but they inject their DNA into that cell, and they'll destroy it. So they're part, actually, of our immune system. And they regulate, like it says there, regulates bacterial abundance. We can get too much of a good thing. I don't know if you remember these slides. These slides come from Dr. Bill Sweat. You remember was it last spring or the spring before, where he came at our invitation, and as a gastroenterologist, he presented some of these slides. These are actual pictures of the intestinal wall. I believe the small intestine or the colon, can't remember now. But the green on the legend here is the mucus layer. The bacteria are the red, happily eating there. Debris is what they're eating or consuming. The host is actually the small intestine or the colon itself. And you can see in this case what we're going to be talking about. You see that big, thick green mucus layer. We want a thick green mucus layer. There are things we can eat that will thin out our mucus layer and make our colon or small intestinal walls more vulnerable to infections and other things like that. So this is the happy state of things, a very fiber-rich diet, and we're going to talk about the various forms of fiber really quick. And you see the bacteria there, especially in the colon, munching away. This is what they feed on. This is what they live on. And in turn, they benefit us through that. However, if you're eating a lot of junk food or a heavy meat diet without much fiber, this is what happens. The mucus layer declines, which is very important. It's a barrier against infections and other heterocyclic amines, all the different dangerous byproducts that you could get, for example, eating pepperoni, salami. These are preserved meats, right? One of the things I used to see when I worked at the Office on Aging, visiting elders, especially elderly gentlemen, not really known for a healthy diet. They're not eating salads like their counterparts a woman might do. A gentleman is going to eat something very tasty. My taste buds as we get older are not as strong. They're not as sensitive. And so you might be eating hot dogs, bologna, salami, all these preserved meats. And when they get into the colon, they get down through your digestive system, they will create a lot of byproducts. They also will be staying in there longer. So they're often a very good reason, along with burnt meat, especially eating red meats. When you eat those kind of things, they put off a lot of dangerous byproducts that become cancerous. These are cancer promoters in the colon. And are we not seeing a huge rate of colon cancer, especially among young people under age 50 now? It's a startling statistic how many young men especially are coming down with colon cancer before the age of 50. It's something that never used to happen before. Lack of fiber is one. There's some other things we can talk about that are irritating in the colon. Now, fiber-rich diet, like I said before, this is the ideal. You want a large mucus barrier there, and the bacteria, something for them that they are programmed to eat, to want to eat. This is from Counsels on Diet of Foods. The book Counsels on Diet of Foods, I believe, was first published. It was a compilation of writings by Ellen White, and it first came out in 1928. It was reproduced or reprinted in the late 1930s and 1940s, and it has different segments talking about different types of food that science now will validate. For example, there used to be huge amounts of stomach cancer through the 1930s. Do you know why? So 1800s, turn of the century. It's because we use salt and pickling a lot to preserve our foods. And when you're eating a salt pork, bacon, pickled fish, and so many other kind of pickled items day by day, when they get into the stomach, when they get into the gut, they are attacking, basically causing inflammation, gastric problems. And eventually, with inflammation comes cancer. Stomach cancer rates went way down once refrigeration came into the being. And now we use refrigeration. We don't often have as much stomach cancer in the West. In Japan, in Korea, other places where they still use a lot of pickles on the rice, they still have high rates of stomach cancer. It's still very common. So appetite. Many are suffering because of the indulgence of appetite. They eat what suits their perverted taste, thus weakening the digestive organs. The delicate organism of the body is worn out, and this is pretty strong, by the suicidal practices of those who ought to know better. You know, appetite is one of our biggest struggles, And it was one thing that Jesus, after 40 days, do you know why he fasted 40 days and then was attacked or tempted by the devil? He had to get down to our level. After what, 6,000 years, we are finally at the point we are so weak often when it comes to appetite without the Lord that we would indulge until we committed essentially what's taught their suicide. Now we're going to talk about what are the foods that promote a good microbiome, and what are the foods that will definitely send you the other way. And you can see a lot of our whole, unprocessed, minimally processed foods are shown here on the left side. Apples. Not so fond of the milk there. I don't know. The milk, of all the things there in that left category, are probably more processed, especially with hormones and things like that. Canned sweet corn, baked potato. Again, these are things that are lightly modified. We have, when you comes with flour, refined. Again, cream is in there. This is not the ideal slide in that regard. But look at the ultra processed. A lot of times we don't look at that. We say blue corn chips or, there's going to be some fiber in there. I guess it's okay. Well, it's carrot cake. It's got to be okay. There's got to be some carrots in there somewhere. We have no excuse to that. Apple jelly babies, gummy bears, actually are made from gelatin. Where does gelatin come from? Cow stomachs, the hooves, skins. The inside of the skin of a beef, cow, pig. Yeah, there's it's a gelatin, but it's cartilage. That's where we get the gelatin from. Yeah, so not the greatest. And all those wonderful ultra-processed cookies, even if they have oatmeal in them. Yeah, oh well. So, but if you are on a steady diet of that, which a lot of executives are on the go, we eat like this on a daily basis. The microbiome inside you is really going to have a very thin mucus layer. Are you well protected against flus and different other kinds of organisms that you may ingest? Probably not. And then for the long term, when it comes to cancerous situations, especially in the digestive tract, those things, when you have a weak microbiome, you don't have those protective factors, you're not feeding that part of your immune system in your gut, we are more liable to have more chronic disease. There's another example of different processed foods. It's an interesting slide. I forgot what the percentages mean on that. But, the sodas, energy drinks, and I want to get into that, is caffeine, hot, peppery items, such as ghost peppers and we used to think jalapenos was, a challenge now, but you can go far to the right of that. You can get into habaneros, which have a high heat index, and then, of course, ghost pepper sauces and things, and young people especially, are going to want to try and do try those. And the energy drinks, Red Bull. I used to go on college campuses, and I would see, and they're still doing it, for cramming for your finals, you would get you could sign up for a free 4-pack of, an energy drink, whether it was Monster or Red Bull, a 4-pack. So you work all night on your test papers or your finals. I think nowadays they use AI. They're kind of cheating around, getting around that now. And then Sunny Delight, that's sugary. We used to have a problem with that at our schools when I worked at Moreno Valley School District, because a lot of families think, well, it's orange. They can't even call it juice. It's about 2 to 3% juice, and the rest of it is starch, flavoring, etc. Even a little salt in there. So Sunny Delight and what's the other one? Tropicana? Yeah. Those are not really juice in there. Try to get 100% juice. And again, when you're taking juice, you're getting the nectar of the fruit. You're not getting all the good bioflavonoids and everything that God created in a whole piece of fruit, because that's fiber. That's the stuff that gets thrown away when you're juicing. There's a role for juice, but it isn't the complete answer for a diet, a healthy diet every day. Here's going to give you an example of a healthy or interesting microbiome from Japan, because I go to Japan quite a bit. I'm going back there in 2 weeks. This is Princess Kako right here. And the royal family is kind of shrinking in Japan right now. They have a concern about who's going to take over. They have the emperor and the empress. They're only figureheads in Japan, but they're a stronger sense of loyalty to the royals in Japan than probably many other places in the world, even England. They're not in Japan. They may be a figurehead, but they're a very strong part of the government still in that way. So Princess Kako's in her late 20s, and we'll look at her diet a little bit. This is where she was in Brazil, and the Brazilians absolutely loved her. It was her first voyage going overseas as an official visit representing the royal family and Japan. And this happened last year. She was much loved there, very stylish young lady. And what is in her diet, as with many in the royal family and many in the average young woman Japanese diet, it's going to be wakame or kelp, seaweed, of course rice, and then on top of the rice they'll actually put some pickles which add flavor, not much else though. Okay, we have pickle relish here. Once you put things in a pickling situation with salt and other chemicals, even if it's citric acid and things, you pretty well, other than the fiber that it's made from, there's not a lot of other healthful components. Some of these, though, are lightly. This is a pickled plum. This is ginger. I think that's seaweed. But anyway, they're lightly pickled in some cases, only maybe for a week or something like that. So they're not as dangerous. But I will tell you, in the old country, in the rural areas, there are still many older Japanese that come down with stomach cancer because 3 times a day they're having rice with pickles on top of different types that they make at home, which are probably stronger in these big crock pots. Kimchi's the same way in Korea, okay? The heavy pickling, and they add more fiery spices, the cayenne type things. How does the stomach take that? Average person here probably doesn't eat with those kind of strong spices. We would immediately feel it. I used to deal with patients that had ulcers, stomach ulcers. First thing we took them off was any kind of pickling, vinegar, things like that, because those immediately irritate. Now, you may have a normal gut, especially as a young person, it's still irritating. They would take a scope, they called it EGD, and go down there. If you're eating a lot of pickles, they're probably going to find an inflamed stomach. And maybe you're using, bicarb, some kind of antacid, or milk, they often use that as a temporary antidote, but that'll get you in the long term. Okay, so she had some seaweed. Princess Kako, she has a very light diet. Japanese young ladies don't eat a whole. They will go so far as eating these, they're like gelatinous type vegetables that will fill them up, but they don't really have much nutrition in them. Just so they have their own kind of self-control when it comes to their diet, so they can stay very thin. I want to tell you about, because you've heard these terms, prebiotic and probiotic. I actually brought a prebiotic supplement here, just as an example. Prebiotics are the things I like. Okay, prebiotics are what's shown up here, indigestible plant fiber found in fiber-rich carbohydrate foods that feed the good bacteria, promote good gut health, and they can be in foods, or you can get them in a supplement. Supplements are not ideal, but you will see sometimes prebiotic sodas now. Sodas that will say they're prebiotic, they're like $1 or whatever. What they're using is chicory. You know, a chicory grown, it's a weed grown in Kentucky and places like that. And it has, they break it down and it's into a liquid form called inulin, and then you can add it to sodas and things like that. I would say if you're trying to get prebiotics or fiber, soluble fiber in that case, through a soda, you're wasting your time. You're not going to get a lot in a can of soda. You're getting carbonation and sugar and other things in there. It's better to go with the original source. Chicory's nice. It's thrown into other types of foods, candy bars now and other things like that, but it's a gimmick, okay? There's other times of things you've seen gimmicks where they've added echinacea, which is supposedly good for your immune system, to prevent colds during colds and flu season. There's not enough echinacea in a bottle of, whatever drink that you see there when you see it, but you are paying a good price for it, and they're trying to give you confidence that you are helping your health when you take these type of things. So again, you may see inulin fiber added to something. It's a big trend right now. It's meaningless in a drink usually. Prebiotics, there are pills, supplements, but getting it, the whole food is always going to be the best. There is a prebiotic here, which I think is also, Benefiber, is also to help with constipation. It's made from wheat starch. If you are allergic to wheat, though, or if you're sensitive to a product like that, you could get in trouble that way too. So it's kind of a short-term solution for that. And what about Metamucil? Or Metamucil? What is Metamucil made from? Do you know? The psyllium husk. Have you ever had psyllium husk cereal or anything like that? Psyllium husk is actually kind of inedible. We don't use it except for Metamucil products, and they add some orange flavoring to it and whatever. I'd like to stay, you can get too dependent on that. What Sister White used to say, what dietitians and doctors say nowadays, is a wide variety of vegetables. Don't just focus on one thing, but get a wide variety of fruits, vegetables, grains. What kind of bread did she say was the best kind of bread? Do you remember in Councils on Diet of Foods? No, I'm glad you said sourdough because we're going to talk about that. But actually, she said a mixed grain bread. She said, wheat bread is fine. Every loaf is stamped with the cross of Christ. Graham flour, because that was a kind of a whole grain. It was a whole grain wheat. But actually, she said not to get so dependent on wheat. Now, that was written 150 years ago. Somewhere in that category. Can you imagine that? Now we know that's pretty smart because there are people, we're allergic, or we have hybrid wheat. Our wheat sources now that we grow, they have a higher protein level than they did back then. And so that does make people wheat sensitive. That does cause allergies. Whereas before, these genetically modified types of grains, whether it's corn, whatever, they can be problematic in that way. But she said a mixed grain with rye, oats, wheat, the major grains like that, she said that was more beneficial in that. So I always look for the mixed grain if I can find it in a store. Sourdough I want to talk about, though. I know that's a very interesting one. And I've actually, Diane and our team shared is her name Faye Cassie? She's an Adventist dietitian, and she talks, I've watched some of her videos now, and she talks a lot about going back, what Ellen White wrote 150 years ago, 100 years ago, those kind of things, Councils on Diet and Foods, versus today. and what we know today. So it's a little controversial, and she's run up against people that have supported her and people that don't. So we'll talk about that. Probiotics also are microorganisms, live bacteria and yeast that live in our gut, and we can take supplements that have those things. Some mild probiotics are like yogurt. I don't have a problem, with a mild yogurt, as long as you're not lactose intolerant. But when you get into using the supplement, the pills that are like I said when I started, 50 million live organisms, lactobacillus and things like that, they're expensive, number one, and unless they're prescribed by a physician for you, you will actually see yogurt. A lot of times they'll say, well, eat yogurt after you've had a regimen of antibiotics. Well, it has to be a certain type of yogurt that really has really high amounts of lactobacillus or other organisms in there. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. A regular yogurt nowadays, when you go to the store, a regular yogurt, it's almost like pudding. When you turn it in back, there's a lot of sugar in there, a lot of syrup, in some of the cheaper types of yogurt. So you have to be careful with that, too. So supplements I'm not really a big fan of when it comes to probiotics. These are probiotics the natural way, prebiotics the natural way. You see the chicory root, because it's often used in coffee substitutes too. It's roasted chicory root. You remember Postum and some of the other ones like that. They actually use it in Japan. I've seen toasted coffee substitutes over there in that regard. Garlic. These are all excellent prebiotic foods, and they're also protective against cancers. People that eat these type of foods tend to have much less digestive cancers. There's my benefiber. Artichokes, I wanted to highlight that there. It's probably one of the few places in the countries you can get reasonably priced artichokes. If you went to New York or some of the other places, now they may grow them in, a little truck farm in New Jersey or something like that. But we are really blessed to have artichokes here in Central California. This is the big vegetable basket of the country still. So fruits and vegetables, I know if I go up to Washington State, oranges are outrageously priced compared to here. Of course, apples are outrageously priced here compared to there. But otherwise, some of these things, berries, not so much. But a lot of fruits and vegetables, we're really blessed in California to have access. In a lot of other parts of the country, they don't. These are some of the prebiotic sodas that I've seen at grocery outlet. I saw these. And again, you may take it as, I tried the root beer one. It's horrible. It didn't taste really like a genuine root beer to me, so I stay away from that. Again, you don't get your prebiotics through the little bit of inulin chicory root that they put in there. You're not really feeding your microbiome. In fact, you're going the other way because there's so much sweetener in there. They're not using corn syrup, but they're using cane sugar or whatnot, and so that's not as helpful either. I want to get into, before we talk about that though, I want to talk about sourdough bread. Because again, and vinegar, I see this, Faye Cassie talks about, well, it's not so bad, and she talks about, now we've seen benefits with apple cider vinegar, that we didn't, Sister White didn't know in her time, it's more pure, etc. And she brings up the example of Jesus being given vinegar on the cross. My first undergraduate degree was in history. And Roman soldiers covered, it was a tough career to be a Roman soldier for 20, 25 years. At the end of that, when you retired, you had cuts and wounds. You probably could barely walk, because they're always fighting with swords. They were in very miserable climates, cold and heat. And the food they ate and the water they drank wasn't always safe. Romans were pretty smart. They were able to determine that if you added a certain amount of vinegar to many sources of water, it purified it. So what Jesus may have been given when he said, I thirst, Could have been actually water with vinegar in it, because that's what they drank themselves, the Romans, when they carried in their little leather bags or whatever they used for liquid. Sister White has an entire chapter on pickles and vinegar in Counsels on Diet and Foods. Where's my phone at? I know in Loma Linda, they have when they say, you bring up Sister White, don't hit us over the head with your clobber texts. So I'm only going to clobber you with one text here, I think, when it comes to vinegar and pickles and things like that. But she does say, and these are principles, okay? And this is where I differ a little bit from what Faye Cassie puts online. I want to talk about principles, not specific things of how, beneficial apple cider vinegar is nowadays versus back in the day. She says, the blood-making organs cannot convert spices, mince pies, pickles, and diseased flesh meats into good blood. And she, again, talks about avoid the use of pickles and spice foods, use an abundance of fruit instead. Again and again, she says that the pickles should never find a place in the human stomach. It will give a miserable quality to the blood. She didn't have all the scientific terms. She didn't have that background. What she did have was some enlightenment from the Lord on this. And we'll have to take her word on it. She was right in so many other categories, whether it was tobacco and other things like that. But we are seeing that she also talks about bread, sour bread. They use sourdough starter. And she said that often that will make the bread heavy. And then what the bakers would do back then is add baking soda. They had a form of baking soda they called saleratus. And they would add that. It would cause bubbles to make the bread fluff out, make it lighter in that regard. And I know there are light forms now of sourdough, but let's get real. When it comes to vinegar-type apple cider vinegar products and sourdough bread, are we doing those things actually for health? Or are we doing it for the flavor? We like the flavor. Okay, so we need to be honest about that. If you're taking sourdough bread, it's not necessarily because it's healthier than regular wheat bread. It's something you may have grown up with, like sauerkraut, and you like that flavor. But it's not necessarily something, I have more problems with sauerkraut than I would with sourdough bread. But if you're taking that, it's actually, what Sister White said, it was harmful for the stomach. It was harder to digest, is what she said with sourdough bread. She said it was heavier, and that's been in my experience. Sourdough bread is heavier in many cases. It's the flavor that attracts you. It's not necessarily that it's healthier. You will see, there's a big trend right now, fermented foods. And I know some of our own folks that talk about health in the Adventist world, in the Christian world, are really big on the fermented foods. RFK Jr., our current Health and Human Services Director, big on fermented foods on that. Because the concept is that when you use a fermented food, that it actually it makes it more bioavailable. The nutrients, the fermentation of sauerkraut or fermentation of a pickle or whatever, you're breaking it down so it's more bioavailable for our gut to eat. Which is an interesting concept. What they're saying is a fermentation is breaking down the cell walls of a plant, like cabbage or whatnot. And it's also getting rid of what's called phytates and oxalates, which are in wheat, on the outer husk of the wheat, and they actually prevent certain nutrients. When you take in, like wheat bran, into your body, it will actually block B vitamin synthesis, or not B vitamin synthesis, but B vitamin assimilation into your stomach, into your body. So there are things like oxalates and that are blockers of good nutrients, that we otherwise eat, that we have to be careful of. However, when you bake, when you cook, when you boil or steam a vegetable, you're doing the same thing of breaking down the cell walls without having to ferment something, and deal with the other negative aspects of using fermentation. So when the big trend now is saying use fermented foods, they're very healthy for you. And that, I will say, that's probably a trend that's not going to last for a long time. Because you can do the same thing with cooking a vegetable or a fruit or another product. It does the same thing. It breaks down the cell wall. It blocks or eliminates phytates and oxalates in many cases. You drain them out when you're cooking your spinach and things like that. So I would say, oxalates, phytates are really high in heavy greens like kale and spinach and that. And when you boil them, get them soft, you're accessing the nutrients. Sister White was never, 150 years ago, we aren't just eating raw food. I know raw food is another trend that people like to do, and it's important, I think, as much as possible to digest. If you can digest it, raw foods are really good, but not the overwhelming part of your diet. There's some health challenges to that, especially as we get older. We don't produce as much hydrochloric acid. Our digestive system, the motility of how food rolls in your stomach and pushes it down into the intestines is slower. I could probably, when I was 20 years old, eat a whole pizza, and I did once or twice, and then lay down and go to sleep at night, And as a teenager, as a young person, your motility is so strong in your stomach, it just moves it right along. Now, you try that 50 years later, I would have indigestion big time. What I would say when it comes to fermented foods is let the body do its fermentation for you. That's what the bacteria we're talking about, the probiotic, the prebiotic, the microbiome does do fermentation, especially in the colon. It does a lot of fermentation. Taking in fermented, you're actually could be stressing out and actually harming the stomach, especially as you get older, because you don't have as much barrier mucosal lining in the gut, in your alimentary canal. So it could be a challenge if you really get heavy into fermented foods.
They say that
Who's they?
fermented foods have probiotics.
Yeah, no, that's the main concept, they say. Yeah, what is a probiotic? When you say they, though, you're saying like a lot of trendy health experts. Yeah, the media, but also, I'm not going to say it's junk science. I say there's validity to it, but a lot of times the fermentation, it's tastier to eat fermented foods. But again, if we go back to principles about pickling and heavy use of sodium, a lot of fermented foods are fairly high in sodium too. And they do definitely have vinegar, or they use to get the fermentation process. Like for sourdough, they usually use a sourdough starter. Look on the ingredients for sourdough bread. It's like the third or fourth ingredient, sourdough starter. Okay, so that's a strong fermented product, and it's going to work its way through the dough, just like yeast. And sometimes you'll see vinegar thrown in the bread. Very often now, you'll see vinegar in the commercial breads if you go to Stater Brothers. It's a stabilizing factor. I don't know what the full reason is for why they do that. Karen?
When I make sourdough bread, it's just water.
How did it get sour then?
It didn't go fermentation, but you didn't add soda and stuff like that. You just put the wheat in the water for the next day, freeze it out, put more wheat and water in it, and within 5 days, it was bubbling itself.
Within 5 days. How long?
Yeah, but there wasn't any acid stuff, it was just put it in water. So when we talk about adding soda and stuff like that,
No, I'm saying that was a common thing, and it is still, when you see commercial sourdough breads,
when you make it now, or if you make it from scratch, you just make it.
this is not going to be a test of your faith. This is not one of the 28 laws in here. But, however, or the 28 fundamental beliefs. But I will tell you, if you are taking or eating sourdough bread, if you're using apple cider vinegar, it's probably a personal choice. It doesn't mean it's any healthier for you. And in fact, going on the principles of what Sister White said, sour bread. She talked about sourdough. And the reason she talked about it, it was popular, hugely popular in her time. It was a big trend in the early 1900s. San Francisco was like one of the major centers for sourdough bread, the creation of that. And it was such a popular product. And it is popular now, I know. But we're eating it for the flavor, though, right? Right? It's not necessarily, I mean, you can read where they're saying, it's a healthier product, but all bread you eat for the flavor. Well, when I read, I'm just going to say, when I read where it says we're taking in a fermented product into our stomach, whether it's bread, whether it's sauerkraut or something else, we are probably making a challenge for the stomach. However, if we're not eating it like on a 3 or 4 times a day or something like that, maybe it's not going to be a challenge as much. But I do feel, especially as we get older, things like that can be, it's contradicting a person. And this is the other thing with Faye Cassie. She said, well, I was shown. She says, I will take that verbatim as coming from God if Sister White said, I was shown. But she also covered principles. It wasn't she's not, if you're just going to go by what Sister White said, I was shown in every paragraph, you're probably going to run out of, you're not going to have a lot to really rely on. She covered principles, basic principles, and I think when she talked about sourdough bread, she was relating that from light that she was given. And it may be in a general sense, it may be, it was categorized in there with vinegar and pickles and things like that.
Meryl, just wanted to point out this handout that you gave does list some fermented foods as superfoods that feed healthy gut bacteria, like the plant-based yogurt, which is souring, and the tempeh, which is also fermented.
They're lightly fermented, though. And I said I don't have too much of a problem with that. Miso in Japan, miso soup, I often eat that for breakfast when I'm over there. They're lightly fermented. They're not, and fermentation also includes cheese, doesn't it? Cheese, heavy sodium, heavy saturated fat, and remember this concept should never be introduced.
Yeah, but we're not talking about saturated fat here. This is
I'm
tempeh
talking
and
about,
plant-based
again,
yogurt.
I differentiate between lightly fermented and heavier fermented. I mean, like you get into some of the white, drier cheeses that are aged for like 5 years, some things like that. Gouda, or in Holland they say Gouda. Some of these cheeses, really hard, ripe cheeses, really bad in that sense.
Yeah, do you distinguish between bread that it has been raised by sourdough starter but not let be sour? Because I know Ellen White talks about bread should be light and sweet.
Yes.
And sourdough bread only gets to the stage when it's sour when it's been left to over ferment.
I have seen, I used to go to Panera a lot, and they must be doing it wrong then, because I get heavy sourdough bread when I would get there. It was tomato bread or something like that, and it was heavy. I know, I think I prefaced this when I started talking about sourdough bread. I know it's different. In many cases, it's lighter. I want to see the ingredient list, though, to make sure they're not using baking soda, baking powder, other things like that would make it bubble without that. If you're going to do it for 5 days like Karen was and let it naturally bubble like that, maybe it's healthier. I don't like the taste of sourdough bread. I'm just going to tell you. I don't like it personally.
Yeah, no, I'm not referring to the taste. I'm just trying to understand what your principle is, because I think there's a difference between bread that's been over fermented and bread that's light and sweet that's been raised by sourdough as opposed to commercial yeast. And that's my understanding of what Ellen White's referred to as healthy bread is bread that is...
Anytime you're using the concept, the term sour in there, I'm concerned. Whether it's lightly sour or heavy sourdough bread. If you're saying sour where you're using a sourdough starter, because in this sense, you're not like Karen. Karen was using it for 5, letting it ferment for 5 days. Most people are not going to have that kind of patience. They're going to use a starter for it. I knew I was going to get tripped into this with sourdough on that. I want to finish up really quick here. But I wanted to get people, I think many people, Adventists especially, in the back of their mind, they've read Counsels on Diet and Foods, and they see what she talks about sourdough. I think it's a good point to bring up that it may not be, it's a challenge for the stomach to digest. And I don't relate to a lot of the big fad right now with fermentation. I just don't. Okay, other things I want to wind up here. Food additives that can affect our microbiome. Proton pump inhibitors, which essentially antacids, very strong antacid to stop acid formation in the stomach. Environmental toxins. One thing I'll bring up, Dawn dish soap. If you go to a restaurant, especially during a busy time like Chili's restaurant, I used to inspect them, other restaurants, during the holiday season especially, when they're running their the dishes through so they can use them again, because cooks are going to start running out of plates and forks and knives and things like that. They have to run them through the dish machine. There's degreasers that they use in those dish machines. As soon as the rack of utensils or pots and pans and dishes come out, they very often, they're steaming, but they immediately stack them and give them to the cook. So they're not even fully drying. So I'm always concerned that there's residue from that. And bit by bit, we're ingesting some of these. They affect your gut, okay, on a regular basis. I would avoid the strong degreasers like Dawn. I mean, that's one that we use, Dawn. But I'm telling you, when you go to a restaurant or in a hospital food service, maybe, also, we have to be concerned also about the degreasers they're using there. Because I know, I worked for Ecolab. They had the big jugs of a degreaser feeding into the dish machine. Alcohol and tobacco also, they harm good bacteria, as we see. Psychological stress, and that's a huge category by itself. When I dealt with some Crohn's patients, but especially irritable bowel, there's a team approach there also to do a psychological test on that. We talked a little bit about dysbiosis. One other thing, microplastics are so huge now. They're in plastic water bottles, especially the little individual 10 to 12 ounce bottles, especially if they've been kept out in the sunshine. You know, when they load those pallets, especially this time of the day, and they're sitting out outside of Costco for a couple days in this kind of heat. And I don't want to point just on Costco, I mean other places too. Plastic food containers, especially cooking in a microwave with saran wrap wrapped over it. That's a no-no. Any kind of a plastic container for your food that you're heating up in a microwave for a minute or more, you're putting the molecules of plastic into your food. And that's been tested or verified. But USDA has always recommended do not cook or put anything in a microwave with a plastic wrap. Plastic wrap is petroleum-based, basically. So those molecules are migrating into there. Vehicle tires was very interesting because a lot of times tires in a garage, I always had extra tires that I would buy to save money on a sale, and they do get very fragrant. You can get microplastics through that. And the last one is seafood. There is so much plastic pollution, especially in the Pacific Ocean. Now it's just huge amounts of it, and it's getting into the fish, especially bottom fish and crabs, crustaceans, which we don't have to worry about, hopefully. But when they've done a study, it's a very famous study where they did autopsies on about 200 different human cadavers. People had passed away. They weren't looking for anything specifically, did they have a disease or anything like that, but they examined in their brains. It must have been in the ventricles, the large channels in the brain. They found at least an average of 1 teaspoon of microplastics. Now in solution, but 1 teaspoon of microplastics in a brain of someone that had aged into their 60s, 70s, whatever. Over a lifetime, we're getting more and more microplastics in our body. And we don't know the full outcome, except it is, initially, it's directly unhealthy to our microbiome. But there's also concerns about cancer and things like that. Yeah.
You skipped over the plastic cutting boards. I had a question about like silicone. You know how they have silicone baking sheets? Are those a no-no? Because I use them. I don't know. And I'd like to know. I'll throw it away.
I'd have to look at it to see. I'm not really familiar with a silicone baking sheet.
On any silicone, I've heard that if you take it and you bend it, if you hold it on itself, and if it turns white in that crease, that's bad. But if it keeps its color, then the crease is fine. So yeah, it's just a bendy pinch it.
I want to summarize that there are many components that negatively or positively can affect our microbiome. Age, we're more sensitive. Our digestive lining, whether we've been a little abusive, we've had habanero peppers for a lifetime, things like that make us a little more sensitive as we get older. Our digestive system is less efficient as we get older. So we have to be a little better, treat it with a little more kindness. Medication is misspelled on that slide, but medications have an impact on the microbiome, pathogens especially. There's some COVID-related concerns dealing with the microbiome. Exercise is such an important part to keep the immune system up, which again communicates with all those different aspects of the microbiome, whether they're viruses and healthy viruses that are helpers for us, or archaea, all these different components. Just this little wise saying, Moses, the first historian, gives a definite account of social and individual life in the early days of world history. He's referring that Moses is the author of the book of Genesis, okay? And so that time, especially before the flood, antediluvian time, but even in Noah's time, after the flood, we find no record infant was born blind, deaf, crippled, or imbecile. A lot of that is how we treated our bodies, and that's why it was placed in the Councils on Diet Foods. Yeah. Okay. We're going to take a break for a little bit. We're going to set up for our cooking school. And please have patience. I'm going to go to the next slide now. Okay. If you have questions, you can individually or talk with me. We'll arm wrestle when it comes to sourdough bread, I guess. But anyway, thank you for your attention. And let's let the ladies set up. They have some delicious seasonal salads that we want to show you. So we have a 5-minute break. We do have a restroom around the corners that are fully functional again. And we have refreshments here in the back. Water. Diane Thompson's favorite mint and lemon water. So in about 3 minutes, we'll start with the food samples and demos.
Testing. Testing. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for staying for our cooking demonstration. We want to share recipes from our community. We have so many wonderful chefs among our church members, and I asked some ladies to share some recipes that they enjoy, they and their families enjoy. So being that it's summer, I just thought we could share some salads. Some of these salads can be meals in themselves. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Linda Evans. Linda is a fantastic cook. She's also a master gardener. But she's going to be sharing a potato salad using tofu, I think, instead of eggs. Do you need a... Okay. I think we need the headset mic. Okay. Thank you. Does everyone want to stand and stretch while we're waiting for Linda? Okay. All right. We're going to walk over the headset mic here. Thank you so much for doing that. What do you need?
In a brown paper bag on the counter. Okay. Can you hear me?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Okay, should we start? Does anybody want to get up and stretch, or you're okay? All right, so today's demo is going to be a potato salad. It's vegan. I have to apologize because I forgot the potatoes. And I forgot something else. So we'll just go and go through it. It's going to be more like a egg salad, but your tasting is going to be potato salad. Okay, so just remember, I'll go through and I'll tell you. You want to start out with, you can use any kind of potato. You want to start it out with cold water, a little bit of salt, or salt to your taste. You know, salt is something you can add or don't add. It's up to you. I do add salt to the water. I boil the potatoes. I usually use the small potatoes. They can be red, the golden ones, or not purple, but either one of the two. Boil them, bring them to a boil, lower your heat, cook for 15 minutes. Let them cool a little bit, take them out, cut them into quarters or into 6 pieces, okay? Then you're going to take them and you're going to put them in the bowl that, you know, the potatoes are missing. You're going to, the next thing while they're cooling is you have your really firm tofu, okay? And I usually put it in, these are sackcloths. There's not a cheesecloth, it's more like a flour sack, because it gets it a little more. And I really get all of the extra liquid out. So, you know, we're going to just do that right now. Takes a little bit of muscle. So, bear with me. Sorry? Whatever you have, it doesn't matter to me. I don't have a tofu press. So I'm pretty, you know, I'm pretty new to tofu. I don't usually use a lot of tofu, but I do like the potato salad really well with tofu because I don't want to use eggs. So it works really, really well. And then what I do is I mix all my herbs and spices in the tofu. And then after I mix that, I add my potatoes in there. So because I'm using tofu, I usually use fresh parsley. But because I'm using tofu and it has a lot of liquid, I use the dried parsley because it absorbs any extra liquid that's in there that I didn't get out. So it's good to use the dried parsley in this recipe. It's up to you. Again, these are just guidelines, okay? It's not written in stone. So if you don't like something, take it out. You know, it's not a big deal. Okay, this is good enough just for the sake of time. And, you know, do you see how it's already crumbly? I don't know if you guys can see it. Okay. It's already crumbled. Okay. And then now I usually mix the mayos and the mustards. If you don't eat mustard, don't have to put it in. And we'll add, I think, does everybody have recipes? Okay. So I'll add some of the, I'm not measuring, I'm sorry, I don't measure, but you can use as much or as little as you want. Okay. We'll give a little squeeze of mustard. Can everybody see? Okay. Little Dijon. You, like I said, if you don't want these things, if you don't eat mustard or whatever, you can always leave them out. I'm sorry. This is Dijon mustard. So a little bit of this, not too much. Now, if I had had the potatoes, I would add more, but since I don't, I'm not adding that much. But I do have the potatoes cooked on my counter at home, so I might just add that, okay? So I'm going to give them a little stir.
Linda,
Okay.
is that soyonnaise? Is that
Yeah, it's a vegan.
It's vegan.
Yeah. And then I'm going to add my relish to this. And it's a sweet relish. And if you don't want this one, you can add the pickles, diced pickles, if you don't like relish. And then I do use curry powder. This is my favorite brand. Don't use one that has cinnamon in it, okay? So you have to read the ingredients, because curry is a combination of a lot of different spices. So don't get one that has cinnamon.
What brand is it?
This one is Ship brand. It's Madra's curry powder, but it's Ship brand.
Where do you get it?
Usually Indian stores, Middle Eastern stores, online, wherever. So I usually take a little bit of this. Actually, that's a bit more, but I like it. And
If you have a question, I have the mic, so I'll bring it to you.
a little bit of salt. I do add a little bit of extra salt because tofu doesn't have, but again, salt it as, to your taste. So that's something that, you can adjust, okay? Then I add a little bit of turmeric powder. Not too much, just a little bit. Then I do have celery seed. This is, again, it's optional. You don't have to. I like it. It tastes good. A little bit of celery seed. And then parsley. Lots of parsley.
That's dried parsley. Is fresh
This is
parsley?
dried parsley.
Is fresh okay to use instead?
No, I already explained to them.
Okay.
Fresh parsley, when you're doing tofu, because tofu has even though I've strained the
remember now.
water,
Okay.
what happens is the dried parsley will absorb that extra water, so it's not wet.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll add some more. And I do like the smoky paprika. A little bit. And all this is to your taste. If you like more smoky paprika, then okay. Also, just the regular sweet paprika. I add a little bit of that. And then I add, you can add onion powder also if you want. I'm not going to. Because again, I had all the onions chopped just like this, but I forgot them at home. So, little bit of cayenne or to taste. I won't make it too spicy for you guys. And then I do have a little bit of white pepper. And okay, so then I'm going to stir it up. And then I'm going to add my chopped, I would dice the celery, so dice everything nice and fine. And then I have red bell pepper. Red bell is kind of really nice because it sticks out, but you can add whatever color you want, okay? All right. So then give this a little toss. And then you can always adjust, like I can always add some more. And I would add onions to this and the potatoes, but normally my relish I would add on my potatoes. So my relish would go with my chopped potatoes. That would be the order. If you don't do that, it's not a big deal. Okay, so then we take this, we add it here. This is the mayonnaise and the mustards and the spices. That's what it is. Then you stir it. So it looks like it needs some more. Okay. Thank you. So I've made enough of this to go, also to cover the potatoes that I would be adding to this. If you don't add potatoes, it's just an egg salad, okay? But once I add the potatoes, it's a potato salad. So right now we have potato salad and we have egg salad. There you go. That wasn't planned. Okay. Then you want to taste it a little bit just to see if you need to adjust anything. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, a little bit of everything. See, this one doesn't have onions and onions. But I have a friend who's allergic to onions, so this would be really great for her. It's pretty good. Okay, so that's it. The finished product looks like this.
With potatoes?
This has potatoes. This has everything, potatoes and onions and all the rest of the stuff that I showed you. Yes? It's just that it's the turmeric.
In my experience, when I've put in turmeric, it doesn't get that bright yellow without heat.
No, I don't use heat.
But that's
Just
what
turmeric and curry.
Okay.
That will give you the color and a little bit of the yellow mustard. You might want to just add, but then add it to your taste. You don't want to add it to,
Because turmeric really, really gets yellow once it's heated. You can add way too much if you wait for that yellow color.
Yeah, I don't use a lot of it.
Yeah, but
because
it looks like it got heated.
Yeah, I just use a little bit of the turmeric, and you can probably put it on your potatoes when they're still warm. So, yeah. Any other questions? That was simple, wasn't it? It's a good salad, and it's great for hot weather, too. It's kind of like a meal almost, with some rye bread. So, no questions. I hope I explained everything well.
Okay, we will have samples available over here of Linda's potato salad.
Are we doing samples now? No.
No.
No,
We
later.
have a blend.
We
So
will
we'll
be
go right into our
sampling
next
everything
salad.
later.
I was going to
Thank
mention too, as a vinegar substitute, you will find like salsas and pickles and other things that use citric acid instead of vinegar. I know especially with salsa, I think it's heritage salsa and others, you look on the ingredient label,
Thank you.
you'll see citric acid instead of vinegar, and that's a good thing.
Okay, I am going to scream. You're not going to, you want to get them to do it a little bit at a time, I'm sorry.
And now Yarka Kabas will have a
Oh,
new
thank
salad
you.
for us.
Great. Well, now they have two different salads.
We're going to set it up for you.
I know.
Linda, I need your headset.
Oh, sorry.
Mark? Do you have a belt clip or anything?
Can you hear me? Is it okay now? Okay, I'm going to make cabbage salad. And, this is a very, very simple salad.
Can I interrupt for just a minute?
Yeah.
If you would take your glasses off, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Is it okay?
Way too far away. Okay.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
All right, okay. All right, I'm going to make a cabbage salad. And the reason I want to share it with you, we need to eat something raw every day. And cabbage salad, when you make in a larger amount, it can last several days. You don't need to make a new salad every day, and it's going to stay nice and crisp in your refrigerator. So many times, we come home from shopping or from the garden, and we are so hungry, and we will eat whatever is there, and we forget about the salads. So I want to share this about the cabbage salad, and I have the white cabbage.
Is that one head of cabbage or
Yeah, one
one
head.
whole head? Okay.
Yeah, it was like this. Yes, and this was I had a purple onions and purple cabbage also, and purple cabbage is, of course, it's healthier than the white one, but all of them. My mother, I always remember when I was little, my mother always say, the cabbage is the broom for your intestines. And so we just mix it together. And cabbage belongs into cruciferous vegetables, and it's good against the cancer. Okay, and all you just put a salad dressing. I don't buy salad dressing from the store.
What type of salad dressing then is it? Did you
I
make
have
this?
the recipe
Okay.
there, yes. I used aminos, but sometime at home I use coconut aminos. Yes?
Since we're filming, would you mind telling the audience approximately what goes in your dressing?
Oh, yes. Okay. It's half cup lemon juice, 1/3 cup of black aminos, 1/4 cup of olive oil, and 1/4 cup of maple syrup. Many times when I make a green salad, it just stays, next day it's wilted. But this one does not get wilted. And also what I put? The pumpkin seeds in it for myself. And every day I eat a big bowl of salad first before I eat anything else. And you can put the pumpkin seeds, you can put the nuts, whatever, and you will enjoy, and it's healthy. Okay. Maybe I'm going to put a little bit more. Okay, this is it, and I'm going to take it to the kitchen and we'll put it on the plate. Oh, you know what? I am sorry. I forgot to put the dill. Dry dill. Oh, I love dry. No, did I put fresh?
Yeah, it
No.
says fresh.
No, it's dry dill.
Dried, okay. Have you tried it with fresh dill?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
When I have it in the backyard.
Ah.
Okay.
Okay, we got to get your.
Okay. Yes, yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll let you, I couldn't penetrate it.
Yes, I understand that. That doesn't feel right. Feel okay? Okay.
Can you all hear me? Or, okay, great. So I'm going to demonstrate a salad that they make in a part of Italy, in Tuscany. They take stale bread and mix it in with tomatoes and onions and make a bread salad. So we're going to do a peach panzanella salad, and I thought it would be a great way to use up wonderful produce we have in the summer. Thanks to Linda, I have some great homegrown tomatoes here, and we have some ripe but firm peaches, and some fresh basil. So lots of great summer things here. So what we're going to start with first is you want to take some rustic bread. If you don't want to use sourdough, you can use, what I have here is a no-knead whole grain bread that I baked yesterday. So I cut it into about 1-inch cubes. They're kind of big. If you want to just use some other kind of bread, pre-sliced bread, your cubes are going to be smaller. That's perfectly fine. And into a preheated 375-degree oven. You want to be preheating your oven. That's the first thing you want to be doing.
Quick
because
question,
you're going
Margaret.
to toast this. Am I not picking
I'm
up
sorry to interrupt, but you have bread here. What can that be replaced? Because some of us can't eat bread.
Sure. If you want to use a gluten-free something or other bread, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. What I'm going to do is this is a homemade kind of a rustic bread. And we're going to just drizzle about 1 or 2 tablespoons of olive oil on it. And I'm just going to pour it directly on here. Just drizzle a little bit. Ooh, hard to get this without pouring it too much on in some spots. Okay, I think that's good enough. And then we're going to, if you have a problem with yeast-raised breads, or just you have a wheat problem, feel free to You could probably toss beans in there or cooked quinoa, just something to make this kind of a meal in itself. We're going to sprinkle. My bread has some salt in it already, but we're going to put a little bit extra, and that'll give it a really nice flavor. We're just going to toss it in our pan, and we're going to pop this right in the oven. We can get some help here. Thank you. Actually gonna. Okay, and meanwhile, while that is toasting, we're gonna cut our fruit. And this is the fun part. So I'm going to start with my tomatoes, and you're going to cut them into about 3/4 inch cubes or 1 inch cubes or so. And here's my serrated knife for the tomatoes. So we're going to cut these tomatoes. Try to work quickly here. I want to show you guys what I do to these. That's why I thought I'd do the cutting here. I'm cutting these kind of big because I'm lazy. I have friends from Romania and other parts of Europe, and they cut their vegetables so small. And I'm like, how do you have the patience to do that? I really admire the ability to dice carrots and cut parsley really, really tiny, but I'm often just a quick person. Okay, so we're going to cut my last tomato here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw these into a colander with a bowl under it to catch the dripping. You might wonder, well, what's the point of doing that? Why don't you just toss it all on the salad? It's going to end up in the salad anyway. The idea is that we're going to allow the tomato juice and the peach juice to meld with the other ingredients you're going to put in the salad dressing before you toss it in with your salad. So I'm going to lightly salt the tomatoes. And I like using a flexible spatula for this so that I don't smash the fruit as I'm tossing. Sorry, I didn't really cut these very well. Some of these pieces are humongous. Let me just do that again. So, okay, and while that's happening, I washed these. I'm going to use my other knife. Got a little paring knife here. And we're going to cut those peaches in half and kind of twist them. Take the pits out, and then we're just going to slice them really thin. And they're going to go right in with our tomatoes. We got some pretty good peaches this year. I got some really nice white peaches from Costco this year, and these are, I believe, from Clark's, but Trader Joe's had nice peaches. I don't know where you all do your grocery shopping. I end up shopping a lot at Trader Joe's and a lot at Clark's in Loma Linda. Get organic produce. It's kind of expensive sometimes, I think. So if you have your favorite grocery store, peaches are really nice in the summer. And this salad is a real hit with friends and family for me. So I've just a light bit of salt, and I'm going to toss that again. Now, these peaches I got this time are not bleeding, not sweating very much at all. So the tomatoes would have sweat out some juice. There we go. Okay, now we're going to make our dressing, and we're also going to throw in the other stuff that goes, oh, one last thing, basil. So I'm just going to take the leaves off the stem, and you just want to cut these kind of small. It's hard to cut with this glove on. Y'all don't mind some plastic in your salad, do you? Because you might get some plastic in your salad.
No microplastics, please.
No microplastics? I know, I'm trying to get rid of plastics. I've gotten to where I don't use tea bags anymore because there's supposed to be microplastics in tea bags. So I'm just gonna, I'm trying to use...
In some tea bags, unless they're done with silk. There's a lot of tea bags now that are using silk.
Okay, now we are gonna put the peaches and tomatoes into the serving bowl. Super easy. We're gonna, I sliced some red onion, and we're gonna throw that in. This is about half a red onion. And you just kind of want to break it up. You don't want anyone to really bite into a huge chunk of onion, so we'll just break that up a bit. And then we're going to throw in our basil. All right. Okay, now for our super easy salad dressing, where you cut the juice, you want to put about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice in there. I'm not going to bother measuring because I can't be bothered. So we're just going to squeeze about half a lemon. Depending on how strong you are, you'll probably get 1 or 2 tablespoons out of half a lemon. This is not a very juicy lemon. If you guys have those beautiful, someone have those beautiful Meyer lemons in the winter, I'm going to use both halves because this happens to be a thick-skinned or thick-rind lemon that's not very easy to juice. If you pre-juice your lemons with a citrus juicer, you're going to extract a lot more juice out of them. But today, I can't be bothered. Okay, we're going to put a 1/4 cup or so of extra virgin olive oil, which we already used a couple tablespoons in the bread. I'm going to do a scant. It's not quite 1/4 cup. And then about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, or to taste. You already have salt in the fruit, and you have salt in the bread, so you don't need a lot. And you could either do this, shake it up in a jar with a lid. That might be easier, but I'm just going to whisk it. Oh, my bread. I don't think we have. 7 minutes. Okay. That bread needed to toast for 15 to 20 minutes, and my bad, I didn't think about that. So we're going to pretend that our baked croutons are in here already, and you just want to drizzle your dressing over it, yum yum, and allow this to sit for a minute before serving, allow the flavors to blend, and it's a really nice, refreshing summer salad. Again, you might want to cut the tomatoes a little smaller than I did. I was kind of in a hurry. Okay, and then this will have the baked croutons, which are really good. And it's really a meal in itself. I don't like to eat heavy. A lot of times in the summer on a really hot day, it's nice to just sit down to something light. Anyone have any questions about anything we did? What a mess I made.
Hold on, here, I'm bringing the mic.
Have you tried it with any other fruit besides peaches?
I haven't, but I'm sure you can do it with apples or persimmons or whatever fruit is in season. The basil goes so well. I don't know that fresh basil is really nice year-round, though, so I thought this is a good summer thing to do. But we live in Southern California, where we have access to a lot of things year-round. But yeah, I haven't personally tried it with other fruit, but I'm sure you can. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. We're going to have samples for you to taste out on the side table over there, and maybe Meryl can stick around if anyone has any further questions.
Dr. Margaret Song has a internal medicine practice. Do you in Riverside? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. And she'll be presenting in October. What is your topic?
This is a good time to introduce our other two topics. So we are doing a series of health lectures on Sunday afternoons, and our next health talk is going to be by Dr. Axa Martel, who's on faculty at Loma Linda, internal medicine, and she's going to be talking about natural approaches to dealing with diabetes. And that's going to be our topic for September 27. We'll also have a cooking demo. We're going to have Indian food. And so please bring your friends, and if you have any neighbors and friends that you know could benefit from a talk about how to deal with diabetes in a natural way, please invite them. We're going to try to make these classes community friendly. And then I'm going to be talking about a very important topic on October 25. It's going to be in here, same time, 3 p.m. I'm going to be talking about visceral fat, the fat that's deep in your belly, and insulin resistance, and how widespread the impacts are of that and what to do about it. So that'll be October 25, and we'll also be doing a cooking demo after my talk. Oh, thank you. Ideally, you want to pour the dressing over the bread as well. And I understand some of you don't want to use wheat, and some of you don't want to eat yeast-raised bread, and that's fine. This salad, I'm sure it would go well with cooked wheat berries or some other whole grain, oat groats maybe, quinoa, or maybe a homemade wheat-free cracker if you have a favorite recipe. Just want to wet things just a little bit just to start the croutons softening up a bit. Okay. Let's...
Okay, so we have plates of all three different salad products to offer you. These are very colorful plates, too, with all that food. By the way, a lot of our health lectures are being based on the book Pandemic Busters. A number of our church members were given this book late last year, If you don't have a copy, we'll be selling it, but it's packed with a lot of advice beyond the pandemic, but are good, solid, research-based information. It was written by Dr. Eddie Ramirez, who's also a research scientist. So we have about 20, at least 20 of these books, and for the nominal price of $10, we'll be selling them. Okay? Yeah, we have them here available if you want to buy one. So I can bring it. Let me go get the box of those. Sure. But it's a really helpful reference. My handout actually came from that. In our future presentations also, we'll be giving away cookbooks. So it'll be like a little drawing that we'll do. We'll figure out how we'll do the drawing. But we will have free vegan and vegetarian-based cookbooks available maybe like 5 per session as part of a drawing. More to come.
Anybody that shows up gets a book?
If you, we're going to figure out how to do the drawing for it. Yeah, it's not going to be distributed to everyone. Yeah, these are not cheap.
I'd love to connect more and talk with you more about what you covered today. I seem to have like gastritis and reflux issues for a couple decades actually.
Yeah, I've had reflux problems too, and it always arises with peppers and spicy food usually.
Yeah. When I was younger, I took erythromycin. I still
Wow.
because of dermatologist prescribed it for me. So I think that's a lot of why I'm stuck right now. Stress.
Dysbiosis.
So,
So you restrict your diet to certain things?
yeah, I actually had so much last week I had to go to the ER because I was having a heart attack.
Ooh, wow.
So it was on.
So a heart attack means there possibly was damage to your heart then, do you think, or not?
No, they
Nipped it in the bud?
They did an EKG. So
Okay.
I felt pain here, and I didn't know if it was my heart or the upper GI. And I had tingliness here, so I was.
I had a heart attack 5 years ago, so I know.
Yeah.
It wasn't tingling though, it was just pain in the upper arms, which is a definite symptom.
Yeah. So I didn't know. So I was like, I just.